It's a pleasure to introduce my colleague, Sue Hares.
Good morning. This is, just a minute. I don't stand in front of mics very well, so. Sue, how am I doing? I got the back? No? Yes? The green light's on. Can you hear me? Okay. This is a quick look at a global communities draft that I've co-authored with a couple other people. I really think the credit goes to the other people and some of the paperwork goes to me. Let's go through it fairly quickly. This is an edition of Global BGP Communities. This is a BCP, okay, but I think I'll go back and make sure everybody's heard the community jargon, which is BGP communities. They color routes, you know. What was first proposed by Anker Chen as he did some work with MCI, and now it's used throughout the internet in various places to color routes and simplify policy. You can add and delete communities, and they usually have local influence between ASs, and the AS path is actually used. Beyond 2 hops, it's not really guaranteed because you can add and delete. So this proposal suggests 2 globally defined communities. It's a BCP, which means best common practice suggestion, and can be done with the Cisco route maps at this time. Juniper has implemented some of the functionality, and Gaty will have it in its upcoming versions. The idea is you say, okay, I want to hint to the rest of the people, avoid me. Okay, I want to put that in, or prefer me. And what happens with avoid me is a Cisco route map sets a low preference to a very low value, and you go out. Prefer me sets the low preference to a high value, and that's something you take care, you'd be a part of your policy. Now, I think this has been discussed on the IDR mailing list. For people who don't know what the IDR mailing list, it's the IDR Interdomain Routing Working Group, okay, and that discusses BGP issues. And some of the feedback I've got, and the reason I'm sitting here this morning, is I'd like to hear feedback on people's ideas, whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. I've talked to lots of people. Some people say they really like this because this is a good way to handle this very problem where you can't influence policy 2 or 3 hops away. Some people say they'd really like to bring back something besides communities because their current policy with communities is so baked in. So even though it's early morning, what I'd really like is to have comments on this. I don't know if I can wake you all up enough to ask for comments, but if not, if you'd send comments to the IDR list. What we're really looking for is comments on it, so we either send it forward as an IDR draft. It's a BCP, and we're doing BCPs in there because there isn't any other location for BCPs of these. Questions on this? Comments? People who've looked at the draft? I got a wonderful draft here where I got comments made. I do recommend if you read the draft to actually send the editors, the author's comments. We'd love it. We'd like to actually go on with the version and sort of propose it for IDR working group draft. Yes, go ahead.
Is my question?
Yep.
I think this has, I'm Alex Bly, Concentric Network. This has 2 main problems. Problem number 1 is a very practical problem, which is that current vendor handling of communities is very basic. Certainly the way Cisco operates route maps mean that if you have n orthogonal sets of communities, you basically need x to the n set of route map statements to handle them properly, which is bad. The second problem that I have with this as a general concept is this lets people who are downstream from me and maybe downstream from downstreams from downstreams of me influence my routing policy, and I may well not want them to be able to influence my routing policy. If you are going to let them do that, you have to have even more complex and difficult to implement manners of stopping them do that if I actually want to enforce my routing policy on my customers.
Okay. Can I ask a couple questions in response?
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't have the implementation problem with Cisco, which was noted by some other people I've talked to, if we actually had flexible, better flexible route maps, would this be a reasonable thing? I mean, I need to separate these, and you're saying yes or no on that. I heard no because you don't want someone to influence your policy down the road at all.
I think it would be a reasonable thing for people to be able to pass up the transit chain their wishes as to the way in which things get routed, but you need to be able to have some form of more complex and policy control at the top end in order to process those wishes with your policy, and basically you end up implementing Perl in your router, which I'm not convinced is a good thing.
Okay.
Randy Bush Ferrio, I don't think I'd want to use Perl, Alex. I think another way, a nastier way of looking at the problem Alan raises is the vulnerability to security attack is non-trivial.
How will this get out?
Let's remember we don't have authentication of BGP announcements,
Okay, yeah.
and there's that whole weakness area, and I'm hesitant to go too far into this considering the result of Steve's talk yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
That was a joke, you're supposed to laugh.
We're supposed to laugh. Sorry.
Or cry, as the case may be.
I think I was supposed to cry. Yeah.
I don't know if people know, but within a half an hour of Steve Belvin's talk on coordinated denial of service attacks, Yahoo was brought down by one. And your first bullet up there, the IDRWG mostly in favor, what I would say is it's the most polite I've ever seen the IDRWG.
I think so, which is why I sort of was looking for some more comments. Anybody else? These are very good comments. Okay, thank you, Randy. Thank you, everyone else. I think we'll go on to Randy. You're next up.